The hum of the server banks was a sound I felt more than heard, a deep vibration that traveled up through the soles of my boots and settled in my bones. 14 hours. My eyes were dry and gritty, and the cool, recycled air of the secure facility felt like a constant, gentle slap against my skin, keeping me awake but never truly refreshing me. The only light came from the array of classified intelligence terminals on my desk, each screen glowing with a different shade of blue, displaying maps, data streams, and fragments of intercepted communication that looked like nonsense to anyone else. To me, they were pieces of a puzzle. A dangerous one. My fingers moved across the keyboard, logging out of each system with a deliberate, practiced rhythm. SIPINIT, JWICS. Each logout was a step away from a world where a single misstep could have real consequences. The final screen went dark, and I leaned back in my chair, the leather sighing under my weight. The ache in my shoulders was a familiar companion, a dull throb that spoke of tension held for too long. But my mind, it would not quiet down. It was still tracing the patterns, connecting the dots between a suspicious shipping manifest in the Mediterranean and a sudden, unexplained quiet from a known agitator group in North Africa. We had pieced it together just in time, a few of us working in silent, focused concert. A potential threat to Allied forces, neutralized before it could even fully form. There was no medal for this, no parade, just the quiet satisfaction of a job done and the profound exhaustion that followed. Ever have one of those moments where the silence is so loud it is almost deafening? That was the space between logging off and standing up. The weight of what I had just helped accomplish pressed down on me, but it was a weight I could not share. Not here, not with anyone outside that room. I stood, my knees protesting, and walked toward the secure exit, my footsteps echoing on the polished concrete floor. I placed my hand on the biometric scanner, waited for the green light and the heavy clunk of the lock disengaging. Stepping out into the brighter, warmer light of the corridor was like crossing a threshold between two different realities. One where I was Captain Imani Johnson, United States Air Force, an intelligence officer with a top-secret clearance and a job that mattered. The other was where I was just Imani, Franklin and Patricia's daughter, Jonathan and Nikki's sister. The one with the job nobody really understood. The fluorescent lights of the corridor at MacDill Air Force Base felt harsh after the dim, blue glow of the SCIF. I blinked, my eyes adjusting, and the memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was not a conscious choice to remember, it was an invasion. 5 years ago, the air in my parents' dining room was thick with the smell of roast chicken, collard greens, and my mother's signature cornbread. A good smell, a family smell. The table was crowded, groaning under the weight of the food and the good china, the set with the delicate rose pattern that only came out for celebrations. This was a celebration. Jonathan, my older brother, had just won a major case, a class-action lawsuit that had been all over the news. He was holding court at the head of the table, his suit jacket draped over the back of his chair, his sleeves rolled up in that effortless way that screamed confidence. "So the senior partner, Old Man Henderson, he pulls me into his office," Jonathan was saying, his voice a rich, smooth baritone that commanded the room. Every face was turned toward him. My Auntie Clara was leaning so far forward I thought she might fall into the mac and cheese. "He says, Jonathan, the way you handled the closing argument." That was not just lawyering, that was artistry. A chorus of mhms and "that's right" went around the table. My father, Franklin, beamed, his chest puffed out with pride. "That is my son," he said, not to anyone in particular, but to the universe itself. I sat there, tracing the rim of my water glass with my finger. I had just returned from my first deployment. It was not a combat deployment, but it was intense. Long days processing aerial reconnaissance over contested territory. My team's analysis had been credited with helping a joint task force avoid a potential ambush. It was a small thing in the grand scheme, but it mattered. I took a sip of sweet tea, the ice clinking against the glass, and saw a tiny opening in the conversation. "We had a good outcome on my end, too," I said, my voice softer than I intended. The deployment analysis I was working on the colonel said it was some of the cleanest work he had seen. It actually helped. "That is nice, dear," my mother, Patricia, cut in, her smile warm but her eyes already sliding back to Jonathan. She patted my hand absent-mindedly. "It is good that you keep yourself busy. Jonathan, tell us more about the partner's reaction. Did they mention the bonus?" The conversation flowed back to him like a river finding its natural course. I looked down at my plate. The food suddenly looked unappetizing. Keep yourself busy. That is what my work was to her. A way to keep busy, not a career, not a calling. Certainly not something worthy of the same respect as arguing a case in a courtroom. I felt my face grow warm, a mixture of embarrassment and a slow-burning anger that I quickly swallowed down. Do not make a scene, Imani. Just eat your food. The memory faded, leaving me standing in the empty corridor, my hand resting on the cool wall for support. That was the pattern. That had always been the pattern. I continued my walk toward the locker room, the click of my boots a sharp, military rhythm in the quiet hall. Another memory surfaced, this one sharper, more personal. 2 years ago, I was on deployment, stationed at a bare-bones facility in Qatar. The heat was oppressive, even at night, and the internet connection was spotty. I was sitting on my cot, trying to decompress after a 12-hour shift when my phone buzzed with a call. It was my father. That was unusual. Dad was not a big phone talker. Imani, his voice was tight, strained. I need to ask you something, and you cannot tell your mother. My stomach dropped. Dad, what is wrong? He sighed, a long, weary sound that traveled across thousands of miles. I made a bad decision. An investment. A guy I know from the lodge, he had this can't-miss opportunity, and I missed. How much, Dad? He was quiet for so long I thought the connection had dropped. 20,000, he finally muttered. I had 10. I used the money from the savings account, the one your mother does not check. But I need to pay the rest back before he finds out. I cannot let her know I was this foolish. $20,000. I felt a cold knot form in my gut, my deployment savings. That money was for a down payment on a house when I got back, a little place of my own, something solid. Dad, I do not have that much liquid right now. Imani, please, you are the only one who can help me. Jonathan is saving for the new house, Nikki has the kids, I am stuck. I heard the panic in his voice, the sheer humiliation. My father, a proud man, reduced to asking his daughter for a bailout. I closed my eyes. I have $7,500 I can send, that is it. That will cover the rest. Yes, he said, the relief palpable. Yes, that will do it. Thank you, Imani. I will pay you back, I promise. I did the transfer that night, watching the numbers in my account plummet. I felt a strange sense of duty, but it was laced with resentment. Why was it always me who had to be the silent fixer? The one who solved problems that no one else could see. A week later, a single text message came through. No call, just words on a screen. Got it. Thanks, do not mention this to your mother. That was the only acknowledgement I ever received. No follow-up, no discussion of paying me back. It was as if it had never happened. And the next time I was home, he was back to asking Jonathan for stock tips, hanging on his every word. I reached my locker and spun the combination lock. The metal was cool against my fingers. As I changed out of my uniform and into my civilian clothes, jeans and a simple t-shirt, I thought about the anniversary party invitation that was sitting on my kitchen counter. My parents' 45th, a major milestone. The whole family would be there. The church elders, all the important people from their social circle. A fresh wave of dread washed over me. I knew the script by heart. The locker door closed with a definitive clang. I slung my bag over my shoulder and headed for the parking lot. The humid Tampa night air hit me like a wall after the air-conditioned base. Cicadas were buzzing in the trees, a constant, droning soundtrack. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a notification from my team. It was Nikki, my younger sister. Her name flashing on the screen sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Nikki only called when something was wrong. Nikki, what is up? Imani, oh my God. Her voice was high, panicked, teetering on the edge of tears. It is Brandon. The business, a client backed out last minute, a huge invoice, and now the payroll is due and the mortgage, Imani, we are going to be short. We are going to be $3,000 short this month. I leaned against my car, the warm metal pressing into my back. $3,000. Again, it was always something with Nikki and Brandon. His brand-building business, as the family called it, was a constant roller coaster of big dreams and financial emergencies. Nikki, breathe, just breathe. I cannot breathe. The bank will not care if I am breathing. Brandon is losing his mind. My mom would kill me if she knew we were in this spot. You know how she is about financial stability. I did know. Patricia equated financial struggle with moral failure. It was a mindset from a different generation, one that did not account for gig economies and startup culture. Imani, please, can you help? Just this once. I will pay you back as soon as Brandon lands this new client, I swear. Just this once. She said that every time, and every time I sent the money because she was my sister. Because the thought of her losing her home, of my nieces and nephew being uprooted, was unthinkable. Because in our family, I was the stable one, the one with the government job and the steady paycheck, the safety net. Okay, I said, my voice calm, even as I mentally recalculated my own budget. Okay, Nikki, I will send it now. Do not worry. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are a lifesaver, Imani, I love you. I love you too, I said, and I meant it. But as I ended the call and opened my banking app, the resentment was there again, a bitter taste in the back of my throat. Why was my support always a secret? Why were my contributions always invisible? The transaction was done in seconds. A few taps on a screen. I got in my car and started the engine, the AC blasting warm air that slowly cooled. The silence of the car was a relief, but it did not last. My phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. I took a deep breath and hit answer. Hey, Mom. Imani, hello? I am just finalizing the seating chart for the anniversary party. Her voice was all business. I have you at table 7 with your cousin Lily and her new husband. He is a dentist, very nice. And Uncle James, you remember, he always asks what you are up to. I did remember. Uncle James's standard question was, still in the Air Force, huh? Well, that is steady. He said steady like it was a synonym for boring. That sounds fine, Mom. Good, now I need to confirm you are coming. You are still coming, right? I know your schedule can be unpredictable. I put in for leave months ago, Mom. I will be there. Wonderful. She paused, and I could hear the rustle of paper in the background. Now, about what you are wearing. The invitation said cocktail attire. I just want to be sure. You are planning to wear a dress, correct? Here it comes, I thought. Yes, Mom, I have a dress. Not a pantsuit? You know how your Auntie Helen feels about women in pantsuits at formal events. And not black, Imani. You always wear black. It is a celebration. Try to find something with a little color. I will see what I have, I said, my jaw tightening. And your hair, she continued, her tone shifting to one of gentle, persistent criticism. You will get it done, right? A nice press and curl, or maybe even a weave, something sophisticated. You know how you let it get when you are busy. I reached up and touched my natural hair, which I wore in a neat, professional twist at the base of my neck. I loved my hair. It was a part of me. But to my mother, it was never quite right unless it was straightened within an inch of its life. I will take care of it, Mom. Good, because I just wish you had a normal job with normal hours, like your brother. Something we could actually talk about. Something where you did not have to wear combat boots one day and try to figure out a cocktail dress the next. She sighed, a sound of profound weariness, as if my career choice was a personal inconvenience to her. Just try to look presentable, Imani. Some of the church elders will be there. We do not need you showing up looking like you just came from. Well, wherever it is you go. The words landed like a physical blow. Wherever it is you go. As if my life was some mysterious, slightly shameful place she did not care to visit. The SCIF, the deployments, the years of training, the lives that depended on my focus and precision, it was all reduced to a vague, dismissive wherever. I felt a hot pressure behind my eyes, but I forced it down. A soldier does not cry on the phone with her mother. I understand, Mom. I will be there, and I will look presentable. I know you will, baby, she said, her voice brightening again, the criticism tucked away as neatly as the good silverware. It will be a wonderful day. Jonathan is giving the main toast, of course, and Nikki has put together a beautiful slideshow. It is going to be perfect. Perfect, as long as I played my part. The quiet, reliable daughter, the one with the strange job, the one who helped behind the scenes but never took center stage. We said our goodbyes, and I ended the call. I sat in the dark parking lot for a long time, watching the headlights of other cars leaving the base. Each set of lights represented someone going home to someone who understood, or at least tried to understand. I was going home to an empty apartment to mentally prepare for a battle of a different kind. Later that night, standing in my quiet bedroom, I laid the garment bag on the bed. The zipper sounded loud in the stillness. I unzipped it slowly. Inside were two options. On one side, a navy blue cocktail dress, the one my mother would approve of. It was elegant, simple, and utterly unlike me. On the other side, my Air Force service dress uniform. Blue jacket, skirt, a row of ribbons over my left breast pocket, the silver bars of my captain's rank on my shoulders. My name tape, Johnson. This was the real me, the me that my family never saw. My fingers traced the sharp creases in the trousers, the polished brass of the buttons. This uniform represented everything I was, everything I had worked for. The discipline, the sacrifice, the competence. It was a suit of armor. But was it armor I could wear to my parents' anniversary? Would it be seen as a provocation, showing off, or would it finally make them see me? I do not know what possessed me to pack it. Maybe it was the accumulated weight of all those dismissals, all those times I had been cut off, overlooked, thanked with a text message. Maybe it was a flicker of defiance, so small I almost did not recognize it. Or maybe it was just hope. A foolish, stubborn hope that this time, they would see the person I had become. With the same meticulous care I used to pack for a deployment, I folded the uniform, smoothing out every wrinkle. I placed it in my suitcase next to the dress. I was preparing for a mission, all right. A mission into the heart of my own family. And like any good intelligence officer, I was going in with a contingency plan. I zipped the suitcase closed, the sound final. The dread was still there, a cold stone in my stomach, but beneath it was something else. A resolve forged in silence and solidified by years of being underestimated. I was Captain Imani Johnson, and I was going home. The scent of gardenias, thick and sweet, hit me the moment I stepped out of my car. It was that heavy, cloying aroma that only seems to exist at upscale events, mixed with the distant hum of a polished jazz trio and the chatter of 100 voices. The banquet hall was exactly what I expected from my parents, all gleaming white columns and perfectly manicured topiaries lining the walkway. Floodlights lit the facade, making it look like a movie set. My heels clicked a steady, solitary rhythm on the pavement, a sound that was quickly swallowed by the noise spilling from the open double doors. My dress, a simple but beautifully tailored sheath in emerald green, felt like a fragile shield. I had chosen it for its elegance, for the way it spoke of quiet confidence. But standing here, listening to the roar of my family's collective self-congratulation, it suddenly felt too plain, too simple. I smoothed the fabric over my hips, a nervous gesture I thought I had unlearned in the military. Ever walk into a room knowing you are about to be measured and found wanting? That your very presence is a minor inconvenience to the narrative everyone else has already agreed upon. That was the weight I carried through those doors. The inside was a whirlwind of silk, polished silver, and familiar faces. The air conditioning was cranked high, a shock after the Georgia humidity, raising goosebumps on my arms. A sea of my aunts, uncles, and cousins moved in practiced social orbits around the cavernous room, their laughter sharp and competitive. And at the center of it all, holding court near a massive ice sculpture that was slowly melting into a swan-shaped puddle, was Nikki. She was a vision. I had to give her that. Her dress was a splash of crimson, some designer concoction that hugged every curve and probably cost more than my first car. Her hair was freshly styled, and the light caught the heavy diamond bracelet on her wrist, making it throw sparks across the room. She was leaning into our brother Jonathan, her hand on his arm, telling a story that had their little circle enraptured. Brandon, her fiancé, stood slightly behind her, looking polished and vacant, a supporting character in the drama of Nikki's life. I took a deep breath and waded in. The first person to spot me was Aunt Carol, who gave me a quick, sympathetic smile before turning back to her conversation. It was a small dismissal, but it set the tone. I made my way toward my parents. My mother, Patricia, was radiant in a lavender suit, her hair perfectly coiffed. My father, Franklin, stood beside her, his chest puffed out with pride, the patriarch surveying his domain. "Mom, Dad," I said, leaning in to give them both a kiss on the cheek. "Happy anniversary. The place looks beautiful." My mother's embrace was brief, her attention already elsewhere. "Imani, honey, you made it. We were starting to wonder, did you have trouble finding it?" "No, Mom. The GPS was very clear." I kept my voice even. It was a simple question, but it carried the implication that the location of my parents' 40th anniversary party was somehow beyond my navigational abilities. My father clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Good to see you, sweetheart. Grab a drink, mingle. Jonathan's partners from the firm are here, try not to be too quiet. He said quiet like it was a character flaw, like my tendency to observe a room before plunging into its chaos was a social handicap. And just like that, I was dismissed. I stood there for a moment, a stone in the river, as they turned to greet more important guests. I turned and nearly collided with Jonathan. He was beaming, his smile the same brilliant, practiced one he used in court. "Imani, there you are." He pulled me into a quick, bone-crushing hug. He smelled of expensive cologne and confidence. Before I could even respond, he turned, gripping my arm, and steered me toward a group of men in impeccably tailored suits. "Walter, James, I want you to meet my little sister." The man named Walter, whose tie probably cost more than my entire outfit, extended a hand. "A pleasure. Jonathan here was just telling us about the big merger." Jonathan laughed, a booming sound. "This is Imani, he paused, and for a fleeting second a genuine look of uncertainty crossed his face. It was a look I had seen 1,000 times. He was trying to recall the basic facts of my life, the bullet points he could use to quickly categorize me for his colleagues. "She's in the Air Force, I think." He finished the sentence with a shrug, as if the details were trivial, and immediately turned back to Walter. "Now, about that clause you were concerned about." I stood there, my hand dropping back to my side. I think, 2 words that carried so much weight. He was not sure. My career, my life's work for the past 14 years was a vague notion to him, and I think to be brushed past on the way to discussing corporate law. The men continued their conversation, their bodies angled to exclude me. I was no longer part of the interaction. I was a prop that had been introduced and then forgotten. I felt my cheeks grow warm, but I kept my expression neutral, the way I did when a 2-star general was questioning my intelligence analysis in a secure briefing room. Do not show them it bothers you. Do not give them the satisfaction. I slowly extracted myself from the circle, and not one of them noticed I was gone. I found a small, quiet corner near a potted fern, pretending to be fascinated by the arrangement of shrimp on a nearby catering platter. The chill from the air conditioning was starting to seep into my bones. This was the script, and I knew my lines, or rather, my lack of them. I was the audience for their performances. It did not take long for the main act to find me. Nikki glided over, a glass of champagne in one hand, her diamond bracelet glittering aggressively. "Well, look at you, hiding in the corner," she sing-songed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "That color is brave, almost makes you look like you have a waistline." I just looked at her. I had faced down hostile interrogators in simulated war games who were less transparent than my sister. She leaned in closer, the scent of her perfume battling with the gardenias. "So, any updates? Found a real job yet, or are you still playing soldier?" She said, playing soldier with a little laugh, as if my service was a quirky hobby, like collecting vintage stamps or growing prize-winning roses. I took a slow sip of my club soda. "It is a real job, Nikki. They even pay me. It is called a salary." She waved a dismissive hand, the diamonds catching the light. "You know what I mean, a career, something with a future, something where you can build something for yourself like my event planning business, or like Jonathan, a partner at 35. She looked over at our brother with genuine admiration. "I just worry about you, Imani, wasting your life on all that regimented nonsense. When are you going to settle down, get a husband, have a real life?" The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. The last time her real life had imploded, when her first marriage ended after 6 months, it was my regimented nonsense that had saved her. She had shown up at my apartment on base at 2 in the morning, sobbing with nowhere else to go. I had taken her in, let her sleep on my couch for 3 weeks. I had listened to her cry, made her meals, and used my own leave days to help her find a lawyer. I had been her rock. And now, standing here in her designer dress, on the arm of husband number 2, that history had been erased. I was just the little sister who was playing soldier. "I am perfectly settled, Nikki," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "and my life is plenty real." She just smirked, patted my arm as if I were a slow child, and floated away back to her adoring crowd. I watched her go, the tightness in my chest expanding. It was a familiar ache, the feeling of being a ghost in my own family. They saw the uniform as a costume, my rank as a pretend title. They had no concept of the weight of it, of the lives that could depend on a single decision I made. of the secrets I carried that were more valuable than all of Jonathan's legal briefs and Nikki's event contracts combined. The dinner gong sounded, a pretentious, resonant chime that made me jump. We were herded into the main dining area, a vast space with round tables draped in white linen. I found my place card at a table near the back, seated between my cousin's teenage daughters who were glued to their phones and my great-aunt Louise, who was already asleep. The centerpiece was a towering arrangement of lilies that blocked my view of the head table. It felt symbolic. The meal was a blur of clinking silverware and overlapping conversations from which I was excluded. I picked at my salmon, the food tasting like ash in my mouth. Then, the music faded, and my Uncle Robert, a jovial man who had built a moderately successful plumbing supply business into a local empire, tapped his microphone at the head table. Testing, testing. Hey, everybody, can y'all hear me back there? A wave of affirmative murmurs and clapping rolled through the room. All right, settle down now. As the oldest brother, I have the distinct honor of saying a few words about my baby brother, Franklin, and his beautiful wife, Patricia. He launched into a speech that was warm, funny, and full of family lore. He talked about their humble beginnings, their faith, their devotion to family. And then came the part I had been dreading, the part where he acknowledged the fruit of their labor. Franklin and Patricia raised some amazing children, Uncle Robert boomed, his voice echoing in the hall. They truly did. First, there is Jonathan, my nephew, the lawyer. He paused for effect, and a round of applause erupted. Jonathan stood, smiling widely, and gave a little wave. A partner at a top firm in Atlanta, we are so proud of the man you have become, son, a real leader. The applause died down. And then there is Nicole. Nikki preened, sitting up straighter. Our little star, building her own business from the ground up, an entrepreneur with that Jones family spirit. And soon to be a bride again, we are all praying for you this time, baby girl. The room erupted in good-natured laughter. Nikki blew a kiss to the crowd. Uncle Robert's eyes scanned the room, and for a moment they passed over my table. They hesitated, then moved on. He cleared his throat. And we are proud of all our children. He gave a vague nod in the general direction of my table. All of them, so let us raise our glasses. To Franklin and Patricia, 40 years of love and legacy. To Franklin and Patricia, the room chorused. All our children, that was my mention. A vague, collective noun, a bureaucratic acknowledgement designed to check a box without requiring any actual thought. I felt a hot prickle behind my eyes, but I forced it back. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water, focusing on the cool sensation in my throat. I straightened my spine, aligning my shoulders until my posture was ramrod straight, the way I stood during a formal inspection. It was a small act of control, a way to armor myself from the inside out. After the speeches, the jazz trio started up again, and people began to mill about, retrieving dessert and coffee. I was lingering near the coffee station, just needing something to do with my hands, when Nikki found me again. This time, she had an audience, a cluster of our younger cousins, all in their early 20s, looking at her with awe. And then I told the florist, if the peonies are not the exact shade of blush I specified, I will personally return every single one, Nikki was saying, her voice carrying. She saw me and grinned, a predatory gleam in her eye. She was performing now, and I was about to become her punchline. Oh, hey guys, look, it's a Manny. Y'all be careful what you say around her. The cousins giggled nervously. Nikki leaned toward them, stage whispering. Watch out for a Manny, she might try to interrogate you. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. She turned back to me, her smile widening. At least we know she is not a deadbeat, right? The words hung in the air, sharp and cruel. The cousins' giggles died out into an uncomfortable silence. One of them looked down at his shoes. Another took a sudden interest in his slice of cake. The insult was delivered with a smile, packaged as a joke, but its intent was as clear as the crystals on the chandeliers above us. It was meant to diminish me, to put me in my place. A deadbeat. Because I did not have a flashy career they understood. Because I was not married. Because I served in silence, I was barely above a freeloader in her eyes. I did not flinch. I looked directly at her, my face a calm, unreadable mask. I let the silence stretch, let the discomfort of her audience grow. I could feel my heartbeat, a steady, controlled drumbeat in my chest. In that moment, I was not in a banquet hall. I was in a secure command center in Qatar, watching real-time drone footage, my voice calm as I relayed targeting coordinates. I was in a bunker in Afghanistan, the sound of incoming mortars a distant thump, my hands steady as I updated the tactical map. That was my reality. All of this was the pretend world. And then, the atmosphere in the room changed. It was a subtle shift at first. The music from the jazz trio seemed to falter. The loud, competing conversations began to die down, not all at once, but in a wave, like a silence spreading contagiously from the entrance of the hall. I saw heads turning, eyes widening. The focus of the entire room was pulled toward the double doors, the same ones I had walked through feeling so small an hour ago. A man stood there. He was tall and broad-shouldered, and he was wearing the crisply tailored blue service dress uniform of the United States Air Force. But it was not just any uniform. On his shoulders were the 4 silver stars of a full general. His chest was a rainbow of ribbons, a silent, dense history of service and command. His posture was absolute authority. He did not have to say a word. His mere presence commanded a respect so profound it physically quieted the room. He stood for a moment, his eyes scanning the crowd with a calm, assessing gaze. And then those eyes locked directly on me. He began to walk, his stride purposeful and steady. The crowd of my family, my loud, proud, dismissive family, parted before him without a sound. They moved aside like he was Moses, and they were the Red Sea, their expensive dresses and tailored suits no match for the raw presence of his rank and bearing. You could have heard a pin drop. The only sound was the solid, measured click of his highly polished shoes on the marble floor. He stopped directly in front of me. He came to a halt, his body snapping to a position of perfect, rigid attention. His right hand came up in a razor-sharp salute, his fingers aligned, his thumb and fingers straight, his eyes locked on mine. The entire world had shrunk to this single point. The scent of gardenias was gone, replaced by the faint, clean smell of wool and polish. The faces of my family were a blur of stunned silence in my periphery. "Major Carter," General Fletcher said. His voice was not loud, but it carried with absolute clarity in the dead quiet of the hall. It was a voice used to giving orders that shaped global strategy, a voice that resonated with unquestionable authority. My own body reacted on instinct, years of training and discipline taking over. I straightened to my full height, my shoulders back, my chin level. My right hand snapped up, returning his salute with equal precision. My movement was fluid, automatic, a language I spoke fluently. "General Fletcher, sir," I said, my voice steady and clear, cutting through the silence. "This is a surprise." He dropped his salute, and I dropped mine. A faint, professional smile touched his lips. "My apologies for the interruption, Major. I was informed you would be here celebrating your parents' anniversary, and I could not miss the opportunity to personally recognize you before I depart for the Pentagon tomorrow." He then turned slightly, his gaze sweeping over my frozen family. His eyes took in my father's stunned expression, my mother's hands clutching her pearls, Jonathan's look of utter confusion, Nikki's face, which had gone pale under her makeup. He was including them in the conversation, but his words were for me, and by extension, for them to finally hear. "The work you just completed for CENTCOM," he said, his tone becoming grave, "was nothing short of brilliant. I cannot discuss the details. The operation is highly classified. But I can say that your strategic analysis of the threat network in the eastern sector directly contributed to the safety and success of American and allied personnel. You averted a significant crisis. The secretary was briefed this morning. He sends his personal gratitude." I could feel the weight of every eye in the room. I saw my father's mouth actually fall open. CENTCOM, the secretary, classified operations. These were not words that belonged in this world of diamond bracelets and merger talks. These were words from my world, and the general had just brought them into this banquet hall like a thunderclap. He turned fully back to me, reaching into the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a small, dark leather case. "Which is why, Major Carter, it is my distinct honor to present this commendation now." He opened the case. Inside, set against dark blue velvet, was the Defense Superior Service Medal. The gold and red enamel gleamed under the lights. "And to inform you," he continued, his voice rising slightly, ensuring every single person in the room could hear, that your promotion to the rank of lieutenant colonel has been officially confirmed by the Senate. Your country is in your debt." With steady hands, he unpinned the medal from its case and leaned forward. I stood perfectly still as he deftly pinned it to the front of my simple green dress, just above my heart. The weight of it was insignificant, but the symbolism was immense. It was an anchor, tethering the truth of who I was to this room that had always refused to see it. He then extended his hand. I took it, and we shook, a firm, professional grip. He offered a curt, respectful nod to my parents, then another to the room at large. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Colonel. Carry on." And with that, he turned and walked back the way he came, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He did not look back. He had delivered his message. The crowd parted for him once more, and then he was gone. The silence he left behind was heavier and more profound than any noise that had filled the hall all evening. It was a stunned, deafening quiet, broken only by the faint clatter of a fork as it fell from my father's hand and hit his plate. The sound seemed to snap everyone out of their trance. I looked at my father. His face was ashen, all the patriarch's pride drained away, replaced by something I had never seen before, sheer, unadulterated shock and maybe, just maybe, the first flicker of understanding. My mother had both hands pressed over her mouth, her eyes wide, shimmering with unshed tears of a completely different nature than the ones she had shed for Jonathan. She was not just proud, she was awestruck. My eyes moved to Jonathan. He looked like he had been physically struck. The confident lawyer, the managing partner, was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The man who could command a courtroom with $1,000-an-hour vocabulary was rendered utterly speechless. And Nikki, my beautiful, cruel sister, she was not looking at me at all. Her gaze was fixed on the floor, her face a mask of humiliation and shame. The diamond bracelet on her wrist seemed to have lost all its sparkle. I did not say a word. What was there to say? The general had said it all. I slowly, deliberately, unclipped the medal from my dress. It felt warm from my skin. I opened my small clutch purse, tucked the medal and the promotion certificate the general had discreetly placed in my hand during our handshake inside, and closed the clasp with a soft click. I looked at my parents. I gave them a small, dignified nod. It was not a nod of triumph, not a gloating gesture. It was an acknowledgement, I see you seeing me. Finally. Then I turned. I did not look at Jonathan. I did not look at Nikki. I walked across the marble floor, my heels echoing in the quiet room. No one stopped me. No one called my name. They were all too busy grappling with the seismic shift that had just occurred, the shattering of the narrative they had built about their family, about success, and about me. The humid night air felt like a blessing as I stepped outside. The scent of gardenias was still there, but it no longer felt oppressive. It was just a smell. I walked to my car, my movements calm, my mind unusually quiet. I slid into the driver's seat, but I did not start the engine immediately. I just sat there in the dark, watching the lights of the banquet hall blaze against the night sky. I could picture the scene inside, the frantic whispers, the questions, the dawning, uncomfortable realization. I placed the small leather case containing the medal on the passenger seat. It was just a piece of metal and ribbon, but it was also a key that had just unlocked a door I had been knocking on for my entire life. I did not feel vindicated. I did not feel victorious. I just felt quiet. And for the first time all night, I felt completely, utterly, and peacefully alone. I started the car and pulled away, leaving the noise and the light and the shattered expectations behind me. The road home was dark and quiet, and for now, that was exactly what I needed. The silence in my apartment was a thick, heavy blanket. After the noise of the party, the roar of my own heartbeat in my ears on the drive home, this quiet was absolute. I had kicked off my heels by the door, the uniform jacket was draped over the back of a dining chair, and I was standing in the middle of the living room in my socks and slacks, just breathing. The only light came from the street lamp outside my window, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. It was over. I had done it. I had stood my ground and walked away. And for the first time in maybe ever, I felt a strange, cold calm. It was not happiness. It was not victory. It was the quiet after a long-awaited storm. And then my phone exploded. It started with a single chirp from the coffee table, then another, and then it did not stop. A rapid-fire, panicked staccato of vibrations that made the wood hum. The screen lit up the dim room, flashing with a frantic energy that was the complete opposite of the peace I had just found. I did not have to look to know who it was. I knew the sound of my family's anxiety. I walked over slowly, my body feeling both heavy and weightless. I picked up the phone. The screen was a waterfall of notifications, all from the same group thread, Carter family, and a slew of individual messages. I sank onto the sofa, the cool leather a shock against my skin, and I started to read. The first was from my mother, sent just 5 minutes after I had left the country club. "Imani, please call me, we need to talk." Then 2 minutes later, "Imani, answer your phone, your father is very upset." 1 minute after that, we had no idea. Major Jenkins told us everything. Well, what he could, we had no idea. The messages piled on top of each other, a digital avalanche of regret. "Your brother is crying. I have never seen him like this. Please, baby, call me." I scrolled, my thumb moving mechanically. My father, a man of few words, had sent only one message. "Imani, come home, we need to speak." But it was Jonathan's message that made me stop. It was long, a solid block of text that required scrolling. My big brother, the golden child, the one whose words always came so easily, especially when they were cutting me down. "Imani, I am sitting in my car outside Mom and Dad's, and I have never been more ashamed of myself in my entire life. What we did to you tonight, what I did to you, was unforgivable. For years, I have made jokes about your little Air Force job. I have treated you with such condescension and disrespect, and I was the worst offender. I thought I was being clever. I thought I was just teasing, but I was degrading you, and you never once sank to my level, the work you do." Major Jenkins tried to explain the level of classification, the responsibility you carry. "I can't even comprehend it. You are a true hero, and I failed to see it because I was too busy being proud of myself. I am so sorry, Imani. I do not expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I see you now. I see my sister, and I am in awe." I read it twice, then a third time, the words blurred. Hero, awe, ashamed. They were not words in my brother's vocabulary, not when they were directed at me. A single hot tear splashed onto the screen, smearing the text. I wiped it away with the heel of my hand, angry at myself for the reaction. This was what I wanted, was it not? To be seen, to be validated. Then why did it feel like a different kind of wound? Nikki's message was simpler, more in character. "OMG, Imani, that was crazy. Major Jenkins is fine BTW. LOL. But seriously, Mom is having a meltdown. Call her." I put the phone face down on the couch. I did not respond to a single one. I just sat there in the dark, listening to the echo of their panic and my own breathing. The calm was gone, replaced by a low thrum of exhaustion. They had no idea. They truly had no idea. And the weight of that ignorance, the sheer scale of the chasm between my life and their perception of it, was suddenly overwhelming. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. The cold liquid felt like truth going down. I would not call, not tonight. The silence was mine now, and I was going to keep it for a while. The next 2 weeks were a study in contrast. At work, everything was clarity, order, respect. I was back at Wright-Patterson, in the humming, climate-controlled heart of the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. The air smelled of cleaned carpet, coffee, and faintly of electronics. My office was not large, but it was mine. The walls were lined with maps and charts. My desk was an organized chaos of classified folders and multiple monitors displaying data that would make my brother's head spin. My team, a mix of enlisted analysts and fellow officers, treated me with a quiet, professional deference that was earned, not given. Captain Davis would knock on my doorframe. "Major Carter, do you have a moment to review the latest SIGINT summary from the 18th Wing?" Senior Master Sergeant Miller would hand me a report. "Ma'am, the pattern analysis is complete. You were right about the anomaly. We have a thread to pull." There were no jokes about my little job. No condescending smiles, just the shared, heavy burden of our work. In a secure briefing room, standing before a digital map of the Pacific Theater, I led the discussion with a steady voice. "The deployment pattern here is not random," I said, pointing to a cluster of red icons. "It is a deliberate testing of response times. Our assessment needs to focus on their command and control logistics. If we can predict the pathway, we can advise PACAF on counter-deployment strategies." I was in my element. This was a language I understood perfectly, a language of fact, strategy, and consequence. It was a refuge. And then I would come home to the blinking light on my phone. The messages had slowed from a torrent to a steady drip, but they never stopped. My mother's texts became less panicked and more pleading. "Imani, I am making pot roast on Sunday. Your favorite. Please come." My father's sole follow-up was, "Your mother is worried." Jonathan sent another, shorter message, "I understand you need space. I am here when you are ready." It was that last one that got to me, the patience in it, the lack of pressure. It was so unlike the Jonathan I knew that it signaled a genuine shift. After 14 days of silence, I finally picked up the phone. I did not call. I texted my mother, "I can meet you and Dad for coffee. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the place near the base." Her response was almost instantaneous. "Yes, anything, we will be there." The coffee shop was called the Daily Grind, a deliberately neutral territory. It was populated by a mix of airmen in uniform and civilians, the air rich with the scent of roasted beans and the hiss of the espresso machine. I arrived 10 minutes early, a habit born from a military obsession with punctuality. I chose a table in the back, near a window overlooking a small courtyard. I ordered a black coffee and waited, my hands wrapped around the warm ceramic mug. I saw them before they saw me. My mother, Patricia, was wearing a crisp linen dress, her pearls at her neck. My father, Franklin, was in slacks and a polo shirt, his posture still ramrod straight even in retirement. They looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I was just seeing them clearly for the first time. They navigated the tables, their eyes scanning the room until they found me. My mother's smile was tremulous. My father's expression was unreadable, a mask of sternness that I knew was hiding deep discomfort. "Imani," my mother said, her voice breathy as she approached. She leaned in as if to hug me, but I stayed seated, offering a small, tight smile. She hesitated, then sat down across from me. My father nodded at me, a slow, deliberate dip of his chin. "Imani." "Mom, Dad." And silence descended, thick and awkward as syrup. The cheerful chatter of the coffee shop seemed to recede, leaving our table in a bubble of tension. "This is a nice place," my mother offered, her eyes darting around, unable to settle on me. "It is fine," I said. My father cleared his throat. "You are looking well." "Thank you." Another silence. This was torture. I decided to end it. "You wanted to talk, so let us talk." My mother's eyes finally met mine, and they were swimming with tears. "Imani, we do not even know where to begin. That night, what Major Jenkins said," her voice broke. "We had no idea. We thought you were, I do not know, pushing papers, doing something administrative we never imagined." "What did you imagine, Mom?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. "When I told you I was working in intelligence, what did you think that meant?" She looked down at her hands, twisting a napkin. "I suppose I thought it was like being a secretary for the government. I am so sorry. That sounds so terrible to say out loud." "It is the truth," my father said, his voice a low rumble. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw the mask slip. I saw genuine pain in his eyes. "Imani, I have spent my life building a certain kind of respect. As a man, as a provider, I was proud of what I built from that garage. And I was proud of Jonathan for taking it even further. But you were always so quiet about it all. I think I dismissed your service because I did not understand it, and I was too proud to ask." It was easier to focus on what I could understand. This was more self-awareness than I had ever heard from my father. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the bitter liquid anchor me. "Major Jenkins," my mother continued, picking up the thread. "He said you are a lieutenant colonel now, that you are in charge of vital national security matters. He said the things you work on are so secret that you cannot even tell us. Is that true?" "Yes, Mom, it is true," I said, my voice firm. "I was promoted to lieutenant colonel 6 months ago. My work involves analyzing threats to this country and its allies. I have a top-secret, sensitive, compartmented information clearance. That is not a fancy title. It is a burden. It means that every day I carry information in my head that, if mishandled, could get people killed. It means I cannot talk about my day at the dinner table. It means I have to be careful about where I go, who I talk to. It is not a little job. It is a life." The words hung in the air between us. I could see them processing it, the scale of it finally beginning to dawn on them. "The money," my father said, his voice even quieter now. "The $7,500 for the house. Your mother told me you knew that I knew." I looked at him, my gaze steady. "I have known for years, Dad." He flinched as if I had struck him. He looked down at the table. I am sorry, Imani, I was ashamed. Ashamed that I could not do it on my own. Ashamed that my daughter, my quiet daughter who I thought was just playing soldier, had to bail me out. I was too proud to thank you. It was the wrong kind of pride, and I have regretted it every day since. A single tear escaped my mother's eye and traced a path down her cheek. We failed you, Imani. We were so busy being proud of Jonathan and worrying about Nikki that we left you to fend for yourself. We treated your sacrifice like a hobby. Hearing the words out loud, the official admission, was like a release of pressure. A valve opening after being screwed shut for a decade. I felt my own eyes well up, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not here. I accept your apology, I said, my voice soft but clear. But things have to change. Anything, my mother whispered. The dismissive comments end now, all of them. No more jokes about my little Air Force job. No more comparing my career to Jonathan S. They are not the same, they never were. My career is not a topic for debate or a punchline. It is my life's work. Of course, my father said, nodding. And my financial support? I continued, looking directly at him. That was a gift. A gift I was happy to give to keep our family home, but it is a privilege, not an expectation. I will not be the family's silent ATM. I love you all, but I will not bankroll a lifestyle that includes mocking the very career that provides it. That ends now. My mother looked startled, but my father held my gaze. That is fair, he said, and I saw a new respect in his eyes. Not the kind he had for Jonathan's flashy success, but something deeper, something earned. That is more than fair. We talked for another hour. They asked timid, careful questions about my work, and I gave them the broadest possible answers, the unclassified version of my life. It was stilted, awkward, but it was a start. When we stood to leave, my mother did hug me, and this time I did not pull away. It felt different. Less like an obligation, more like a choice. A week later, there was a knock on my apartment door. I was in sweatpants and an old Air Force t-shirt, my hair piled on top of my head. I was not expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw Jonathan standing there, his hands shoved in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. I opened the door. Jonathan. Imani, hey, he shifted his weight. I was in the neighborhood. Well, not really, I drove here. Can I come in? I stepped aside and let him enter. He looked around my apartment, at the neat shelves, the framed photo of my graduating class from officer training school, the abstract art on the walls. Nice place, really nice. Thank you. The awkwardness was back, a physical presence in the room. He turned to face me. I meant what I said in the text, every word, but I needed to say it to your face. Okay, I said, crossing my arms. Say it. He took a deep breath. I have been a terrible brother to you. For years, I built myself up by tearing you down. I think I was intimidated. You were always smarter than me. Quieter, yes, but sharper. And when you joined the Air Force, I told myself it was because you could not hack it in the real world. That was a lie I told myself to feel better about the fact that my little sister had the courage to do something I never could. What you do, the weight you carry. I could not handle it for a single day. My world is depositions and mergers. It is stressful, but it is not life and death. Your world is, and I am so sorry that I ever made you feel small for that. You are the strongest person I know. He looked like he was about to cry. This man, my arrogant, brilliant brother, was on the verge of tears in my living room. The last of the ice around my heart began to crack. I accept your apology, Jonathan, I said, but you need to understand, the teasing stops, the comparisons stop, permanently. They are stopped, I promise you, he hesitated. Nikki, she is still Nikki, but I have talked to her. Mom and Dad have talked to her. She gets it, I think, in her own way. I am not worried about Nikki, I said, and I meant it. Nikki's approval was never the goal. He nodded, and then a small, genuine smile touched his lips. Lieutenant Colonel Carter, it has a good ring to it. For the first time, I smiled back. It does it not? 6 months later, the change was palpable. I was walking up the path to my parents' new house, a smaller, more manageable ranch-style home in a quieter neighborhood. The move had been their idea, a downsizing that felt like a symbolic shedding of old pretensions. I carried a peach cobbler, my contribution to the dinner. The atmosphere inside was different, warmer, less formal. The furniture was comfortable, not ornate, My father was in the living room, actually laughing at something on the television. He saw me and stood. "Imani, you are right on time." He took the cobbler from me. "Your mother is in the kitchen." In the kitchen, my mother was fussing over a pot of collard greens. She turned and gave me a real, unstressed smile. "Hi, baby. Oh, that cobbler looks perfect." She hugged me, a quick, natural embrace. "How was your week?" "It was busy," I said, leaning against the counter. "We had a big briefing for the Pentagon, a lot of preparation." She nodded, her expression serious but interested. "That sounds important. I hope it went well." It was a simple exchange. But the difference was seismic. She did not press for details she knew I could not give. She did not glaze over or change the subject. She acknowledged the importance of my work and left it at that. Nikki arrived late, as usual, but instead of a dramatic entrance, she just gave a wave. "Hey, Imani, traffic was a beast." During dinner, as we passed around the fried chicken and mac and cheese, the conversation flowed easily. Jonathan asked me, "So, with your new rank, does that mean more responsibility on the administrative side, or are you still deep in the analytical work?" It was a thoughtful, intelligent question. He was trying to meet me on my turf. "A bit of both," I said. "I still lead a team of analysts, but now I also have a larger role in liaising with other intelligence agencies. It is a different kind of challenge." "I bet," he said, nodding. "Managing people with that level of expertise must be like herding cats." I laughed. "You have no idea." They talked, actually talked. They listened when I spoke. They asked questions that showed they were trying to understand my world, not diminish it. I was not the afterthought anymore. I was not the quiet one in the corner. I was Lieutenant Colonel Imani Carter, and I was sitting at the table as an equal. I was finally comfortable in my own skin. The approval I had chased for so long was now irrelevant. I was not seeking it. I was commanding respect, and in doing so, I had finally found my place. Later that night, back in the silence of my own apartment, I thought about the journey. The invisible girl at the dinner table was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her own worth. Ever have one of those moments where you look back and barely recognize the person you used to be? That was me, sitting in the dark, thinking about that night at the country club. It was not about the uniform, or the rank, or shocking my family. It was about the moment you decide that your own validation is enough. That the sacrifices you make in the dark, the weight you carry alone, they are not for show. They are for a purpose bigger than anyone's approval. Can you imagine spending your life feeling like a ghost in your own family? Smiling through the jokes, biting your tongue, all while holding secrets that would rewrite their entire understanding of you? That was my reality for over a decade. But here is the thing about truth. It does not need a spotlight to be true. It just is. And eventually, it finds a way to stand up. The military taught me a lot about strength. But the most important lesson was not about physical endurance or strategic thinking. It was about the fortitude to stand alone, to know your value even when no one else does. So many of my brothers and sisters in uniform know this feeling. The silent sacrifices, the missed birthdays, the holidays spent in distant lands, the emotional toll of work you can never discuss. We do it not for the parades or the accolades, but because we believe in something greater than ourselves. And that belief, that core of steel, it has to be enough. Because when you build your worth on that foundation, no one can ever take it away from you. Not a dismissive comment, not a hurtful joke, not even the silence of your own family. Setting boundaries is not about building walls. It is about drawing a line in the sand and saying, "This is me. This is what I stand for. Respect it." And sometimes, the hardest people to set those boundaries with are the ones who are supposed to love you the most. But it is necessary. It is an act of self-love, an act of preservation. If you have ever felt overlooked, if you have ever had your accomplishments minimized by the very people who should be celebrating you, I want you to hear me. Your value is not determined by their recognition. It never was. Your value is built by your sacrifices, secured by your integrity, and validated by your own peace. Do not wait for a Major Jenkins to show up and announce your worth to the world. Announce it to yourself every single day. Stand tall in your truth, even if you have to stand alone for a while. Because I promise you, the view from that place of self-respect, it is worth the journey. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever fought to be seen, I want to hear about it. Share your story in the comments below. Let us build a community of resilience. And if you found meaning in this, if you want to see more stories about finding strength in the face of doubt, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support tells the algorithm that these narratives matter. Thank you for listening. This is Lieutenant Colonel Imani Carter, signing off.